Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
What a save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Moreno leaves absolutely no doubt. The Sounders rule the region. Seattle Sounders is campeón. It's gone! It's gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
And Portland can't say shit.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Overcome seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. This episode is part of our Club World Cup coverage that is sponsored by Marnie O'Shan Homes. So thank you to my sister for helping sponsor and make our Club World Cup happen.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, sis. I really appreciate that, man. We're sitting here back in the war room for the media members at the Sounders facility today. Yeah. Even with FIFA here and some changes to the facility, right?
It still feels pretty much the same.
It does.
Like there's little differences, like they're playing with and of course this, I should say, we're doing what we learned this week with Niko Moreno. Of course, I should have introduced you at the start, Nico. I'm Jeremiah Shan. But we, they have a different ball. There's ad boards along the training pitch. They wear different pennies. But really, the first day there was maybe some extra people here. But it really feels still like Sounders FC Center or whatever it's called. I guess at this point I should know what it's formally called. But
yeah, probably this is Swedish Performance Center and Clubhouse. Woo! Look at that.
Yeah, but you go to Lumen Field and it feels like a different place.
Yes.
That's why I bring it up, is the contrast is interesting because Lumen Field feels like they've got all this temporary fencing everywhere. They've got these new turnstiles. There's grass on the pitch. Mm-hmm. They have a whole new protocol for getting into the stadium. It will feel familiar but different, I think, to fans who come. And one of the things we talked to Albert Rusnák today, it's going to feel different to the players too. Because unlike a normal game where they stay at home, like Albert said, 3 or 4 hours before the game, I'm playing with my kids, I'm just having a relaxing day. This is like FIFA basically is making it maybe purposefully feel almost like a road game. They're supposed to stay in a hotel. They have to all take a bus to the stadium together. They don't actually, like Albert pointed out, he's not even sure if they're going to use the home locker room for
some games,
for one of the games.
Not one game.
Yeah, because they're designated as the road team for one game. So it is going to be an interesting contrast. The makeup of the crowd will be a little bit different. Like we said, the pitch is going to feel different. I don't know how much is this. I guess in some ways it's kind of cool because it does make it feel like it's just not another home game and not another, it's not just like a friendly. Like this feels like it's different.
Yeah, a lot of tournaments around the world, they have the same dynamic where you put the players in like a camp, right, of its own, and you want to make sure that they're eating right, that they are sleeping right, and all of that can be a lot more limited and controllable by having players in one specific location. But it will be interesting because just like we've heard Albert say, Stefan Fry, sometimes it's nice to just be home, play with your kids, is what Albert said right before, and then go to the game. Steph's talked about, he really appreciates, or a lot of the guys appreciate just being home during this sort of game. So it will feel a little bit different. I think that the biggest difference will be the grass. It sounds like they laid it early.
2 weeks. Yeah, it's been in for about 2 weeks. Supposedly the seams are gone. We'll see if that actually is true. Right.
Because one thing we've seen when it comes to this sort of feel, and, I've talked to some groundskeepers, and I actually should do some with that, but, some have a filling in between. This one apparently is actually laid on and is already attaching, and that's going to make it less subjective to wear and tear, slipping.
Because it has to be here. It has to hold up. So one of the things that's different about this temporary grass than the previous temporary grasses that they've had here is that this is going to have 6 games over the course of 11 days or so. And in the past, they've only had to play 1, maybe 2 games here, maybe 3 at the most. This is a different wear and tear. This is going to have to hold up in a totally different way than any of the previous temporary grasses have.
Yeah, and that's a positive because if I remember, I covered the Panama-USA game here. And
in 2013?
In 2013, I believe. I don't remember the year. And the field was so bad, it felt like when you kick your carpet and the carpet kind of stays up a little bit and you're trying to bring it back down, there were spots on the field that it looked that bad. And I remember the Panamanian coach was irate and he was just like upset about it, and it was this terrible field. So I do think that regardless of how good the grass is, it does take some getting used to. The speed of the ball, the bounce of the ball, simply your stop and go. We have a lot of different guys that use the change of tempo, change of pace, like Ryan Kent and Pedro de la Vega. That's going to be something that you're going to kind of have to get used to. Brian said something about they were going to be able to walk it, and FIFA would allow him to just
walk. Well, he said he was going to be able to walk it.
He was going to walk it.
Yeah, he said he didn't know if he was going to have the players do it, but he said they did get approved to do it. I don't know, maybe they'll... I don't know. It'll be interesting how they handle tomorrow, because tomorrow they're going to... I guess... we should have probably asked, but so they're going to train here tomorrow. Today's Friday. They're going to train on Saturday at Long Acres, and then I guess they're all going to, I don't know what time they have to be at the hotel.
My guess is that just like it happens with any other tournament in a new stadium, there's got to be in Spanish, it's like recognition of the field.
Yeah.
You just walk it, you play it in a little bit. I would think that there's got to be at least some time that they get to do that.
I would think before the game at least.
Usually the day before. You remember when we were in Mexico and they were there? But I don't know. But it like you said, it's interesting because I guess there has to be like a balance of taking care of the grass and then allowing players to get used to it. So I don't know. But I think that'll be a bigger deal than maybe people think.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. It'll be interesting if that's a good thing or a bad thing for the Sounders. I suppose that anything that isn't normal is maybe an advantage for the underdog, because Botafogo comes into this game presumably as the favorites. How big of a favorite, though, do you think they should be? And I guess from a competition standpoint, this is the tournament for the Sounders. If they can win this game, all of a sudden there are possibilities of who knows, right? If they lose this game, the next 2 games are purely really for pride. And how competitive can they keep those games? Because the chances of them winning either Atletico or PSG, pretty low.
Yeah. I mean, soccer-wise, and this is something that I've said a couple of times, Botafogo this year is not the Botafogo of a year ago, the 2024 champs of the Copa Libertadores. Lost a couple of key players, including record-breaking signing Thiago Almada. This team this year just hasn't been as elite on offense as it was a couple of years ago. I mean, it was one of the best, if not the best, actually, season Botafogo's ever had.
Well, yeah, they won. Not only did they win the Copa Libertadores, but they also won the Brazilian Serie A, which was the first time in 30 years almost that they'd won that. They'd never won the Copa Libertadores before. So that was a massive season. And Botafogo historically they're a Rio de Janeiro club, but they are like the 4th biggest club in Rio, right?
Yeah, I call it 3rd maybe.
3rd or 4th,
yeah,
okay.
but they're definitely not one of the top 2.
Right.
So it really is something to be said. This and we talked to JP about it, this is not the Botafogo that he played for, because
that was a team that was struggling just to be viable.
That's right.
Not a club that was targeting Copa Libertadores. This is a club that was like, can we keep the doors open?
Yep. And he said it, money, right? That's what's changed. John Textor completely changed the dynamic of how things happen, and they have very talented players. So I would think that, yes, this is the game for Seattle because of a couple of things. We just mentioned that they are a team that's lost some players, that they're sixth in the league. They're second in the group stage for Copa Libertadores. They've struggled a little bit in Copa Libertadores. But they have some very talented players. There's no doubt about that, right? Igor de Jesus is a guy that is getting ready to go to Nottingham Forest. But that's also something that I'm kind of, and we've talked about this off camera, the fact that de Jesus, Cubiano, and Jair Cunha are possibly leaving the club makes me doubt how much commitment they might have. If I know I'm leaving, how much am I going to expose my body? I already have one foot out the door, kind of.
It's almost an unprecedented type of situation where they made this transfer and then they're being allowed to stay with their old team for a, almost an exhibition tournament. Like, I would think Nottingham Forest, if this deal is done, you would think Nottingham Forest is like, look, they can play, but they better not get hurt.
I think, like I love to say, Wu-Tang, baby, cash runs everything around me.
Right.
Like, you and your best players, because you're going to get some real good bonuses. $2 million if you win, $1 million if you tie. You need your best players. And do not get it twisted. Igor de Jesus is a phenomenal player. This is a guy that is an aerial threat. He's fantastic on the ball, the link-up play. They move around a lot, whether it's under the 4-4-2 or the 4-2-3-1. The front three or the front two, they move so much. They're always in and out. This is a player that's going to be very important for Botafogo. And if he's not fully on, maybe Seattle can, have something to do. The other one was the travel. They obviously started in California. That's where they've been at.
Right.
In LA. Now they're going to travel again. They're going to come here. People underestimate how much traveling.
Well, and they're coming, and to get to LA, they had to come from Brazil. This is a huge trip for them.
It's a huge trip.
And one of the other things about that is that this is like they probably get into town tomorrow. They probably don't get into town until tomorrow, right?
I thought it was today, but
where are they going to train?
That's a great question.
Because according to we're like having this real time conversation.
Yeah, because River Plate plays tonight.
River Plate is training here.
Yeah.
But we got a list of all where everyone's training, and Botafogo is not listed as training. No one else is listed as training in Seattle.
That is correct. So maybe they do come in tomorrow because Inter Milan is going to be at the VMAC.
Right.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's interesting.
They might, I suppose what they might do is train in LA in the morning and then fly here in the afternoon.
That makes sense. But again, that's, some wear and tear in the body that we just talked about the field. There are a lot of components that I'm fearful to say, because I feel like that whenever I say, look, there's things going on here that the Sounders should take advantage of, they do not. So hopefully.
We don't need to get into it. I agree. That is.
We'll leave it
last week we called that a must-win game, and they turned in one of their worst performances of the season. We don't need to relive all that. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Sounders insofar as this has been a interesting week from a injury perspective. On one hand, it looks like Kim Ki-hee might be available. He trained in full the previous 2 days. He was a more limited participant today. It looked like that might just be purely precautionary. Like, they are sitting here literally going, we aren't going to get him hurt this close to the game. We don't know what role he's going to play. He might start. He might come off the bench. We don't know. But let's assume he's not starting. John Bell, and that leaves John Bell and Jackson Reagan as really the only two healthy and available natural center backs. They did not look great against Vancouver.
No, they did not.
But I don't know. Is there any, how worried should we be about that specifically?
I'm very worried. I feel like job one for me is how do we make sure that we do not expose our center backs? So how do we play the game? And I think you got to try in the majority, because this is a very good team in front of you, to win the possession game and defend yourself with the ball. Try to limit the services into the box, and that'll be hard to do because this is a team that has very quality players out wide, including fullbacks that are phenomenal getting forward. So because of that, I feel like Seattle's going to have to just play a very complete game, like we've heard a couple of players say this week. Yes, cliche, very obvious. We're not, saying anything new here. But the reality is that you want to keep this team away from exposing right now your Achilles heel, which is John Bell and Jackson Reagan. And look, I don't want to over-criticize John Bell, but he just has had a lot of misreads, late reactions that have put him in some compromising positions. And I think Jackson Reagan is still a little bit rusty. I
think he's a little bit rusty, and I think the other thing that is tough is John Bell clearly much more comfortable on the left, but the problem with that is that it sort of takes away one of Jackson Reagan's main strengths,
Absolutely.
Which is that when they're going into that 3 center back build out, he can be in the middle when he's on the left, and instead he's on the right, and we see it the last 2 games. We've seen it. They're not able to use him the same way that they use him in the build-out because he ends up out on the wing, and yeah, he sends in some good crosses and stuff, but really his game is breaking lines farther back in the field, and he's just not really able to do that as much when he's on the right. And so it hurts the Sounders in 2 ways. It hurts them both defensively, and it hurts them building out. And that's been, if you want to know why the team has looked disconnected in the last 4 games, I think a big part of it is that Jackson Reagan hasn't been able to they haven't had a center back who's able to really start the attack effectively.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the coin, when it comes to defense, the other side of the game, you don't have Yemer Gomez-Andrade, a guy that is so crucial when it comes to just correcting anything that happens. If a player's too forward, if there's an easy giveaway, you usually have a guy that's there. You also physically, a guy that is as good as anyone when it comes to interceptions, aerial duels, and clearances. I mean, that's a huge deal. So it is unfortunate for Seattle, but for me, I am worried, going back to your question, when it comes to Jay Bell and Jackson Reagan. I was actually very excited yesterday when I saw Kim Ki-hee.
So was I.
So healthy. I was just talking to some of the Brazilian guys here, George and his photographer, and it's clear that Kim Ki-hee has that physicality that most times he takes when you play a South American team.
Well, and I will say that the other thing about Kim is that he has so much international experience, especially compared to John Bell, where he has, he's been in tournaments like this. He's been in the Club World Cup. I think he's actually scored in the Club World Cup. He is a player who has so much experience. He understands what this is. This is sort of exactly why you sign a Kim Ki-hee, and it would be a real shame if he's not able to get on the field. We should talk a little bit about why Yeimar is not going to be available. He looked like, a week ago, it looked like he was ready to come back, or he was getting close to coming back. And then while the Sounders were away, apparently he re-injured himself during rehab. Not re-injured, he picked up a new injury.
He picked up a new injury. You could call it, it's connected. I mean, I've been talking to a couple of, physios that kind of do this for a job down in South America. And, it is something that has to do with maybe vamping too hard a guy that's not fully there with that hamstring, so he's compensating on the other leg, and that creates a ripple effect where the way a athlete runs is very important. And you could see that anywhere. They'll put you, the sports science people will put you like in this program with like things around your body while they're trying to figure out how you're running, how you plant your feet, and when you're not fully ready to do certain things and you don't see it coming, that's when things happen. So I feel like that's possibly what happened here. Yeimar was very determined to be back, and he was probably pushing himself pretty good, and that kind of led to something that apparently is a 3 to 4 week situation.
Yeah.
I've heard something along the lines of being at like a lower part of the calf, so that's even harder to deal with. Basically, if it's a knee, if it's something else, you hit it with a shot, and you could play. You could take some pain medicine, and you'll be on there. But when it comes to that lower bottom of the calf, there's just no way that you're going to be able to run. So concerning. The other one was Stuart Hawkins, for anybody that maybe was not on with what we've been reporting. 6 to 8 weeks, quad injury. That is insane.
That is insane. And my understanding is that I haven't been able to totally confirm this, but my understanding was that he actually hurt himself while doing the post-game sprinting that they do. That's explicitly done to avoid injury. Like that's not necessarily something where they're pushing themselves, but they're doing it just to sort of get themselves stretched out. And that usually what happens is the players who don't play up to a certain amount of minutes do this drill basically just to get them stretched out. And anyway, it looks like that's how he hurt himself. So
we've seen it.
We've seen it happen before too. Yeah,
exactly. So it's interesting, but it is something that is concerning. I mean, I've heard all the comments, right? It's interesting that his province is Swedish, so we have all these injuries, yada, yada, yada. I get it. Look, it is ironic. It's something that I've asked as well. But they have not been able to really come up with, a reasoning behind it.
I mean, they certainly are putting plenty of resources into injury prevention and injury rehabilitation, and it doesn't. And I can only imagine how frustrating it must be for everyone in the organization to be like, man, we moved into this facility, and supposedly one of the benefits of this facility was that we were going to be able to stay healthier. And I don't know that it's like, it always feels like your team is the most injury prone team because you pay the most attention to it. But it does seem like the Sounders have had a lot more injuries that seem to get concentrated on specific parts of the field, and to so it's like all of a sudden they have a bunch of center backs getting injured, or before it was a bunch of forwards getting hurt or whatever, and it just seems, or they have players all down the spine who are getting hurt. I'm not saying that, like, I do think the Sounders are a good, I think they've hired good people. I think they have access to great equipment. It just goes to show that sometimes this is a little bit of luck involved when you're talking about finely tuned athletes, where you a little tweak here, a little tweak there, and sometimes things go wrong.
And that's why I'm hoping there's some sort of reassessments. I've asked that consistently. How often do they reassess their sporting? The way that they handle the performances database, some of the trainers, some of the trainings. Then it comes to rehab, because those are specifically the ones that it feels like they failed, right, with Jordan.
It does seem like the rehab situations have been the most problematic. I mean, last year it was Pedro. This year it's Jordan. We've had this now Yamar. I'm sure we could find more examples if we really thought about it.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of the thing, right? I mean, we understand there's a problem. Like, we see it internally. I can only imagine that as an organization, they obviously see it and they're trying to figure it out. But sometimes it is just the way that the cookie crumbles. I hate to say it, and I don't want to, insult anybody's intelligence by just being like, because it is a problem. I get it's a problem.
It is a problem.
But it's a lot harder to decipher than you may seem, I think.
Yeah, I would say that. And I would also just add, sometimes it's worth reminding ourselves, the people who are most worried about this are the people upstairs, are the people in here, are the people, like, as worried fans are about it, I guarantee you Brian Schmetzer is pulling his hair out about this. The trainers are pulling their hair about it. Probably Adrian is pulling his hair about it. No one is here saying, oh, what are you going to do? Right. Like, they're all mad. They all are, like, just as mad as you are, and they're frustrated. And I think it's just a matter of trying to figure out how you go about fixing it. Anything else from these? Any other players that you think we should be keeping an eye on from Botafogo? Anything else that heading into this game before we go into a break and talk a little bit more about updates on the whole bonus situation? I will say a couple of things. I think that Jesus Ferreira has looked very engaged all week long. I've liked what I've seen of him in and out of, whether it's playing on the wing, playing up top. I think
JP, I mean, it goes without saying why he's so motivated. He had a banger yesterday, and he's been so good defensively today. Had a couple of takeaways, good passes, good slip-ins, the way he switches the ball. So he might be a guy that you are going to think about. Brian talked about, if I need to bring him in, I'm not going to, hesitate. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be interesting. I've been wanting to see more from Obed specifically over the last couple of games. So I've kept my eye on him. He looks like he's grinding hard, but this is his moment to shine. So he's a guy that
really
we're
is
looking at. And we'll talk about Botafogo, but anybody else from the Sounders that you want to highlight?
I mean, it looks like Danny Musovski is sort of getting worked back into the starting group.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a little bit different of a starting group this week. They've been playing around with not necessarily formations, but personnel. I think that is one of the things that the Sounders have, maybe I can't really fault Schmetzer for this because I do think that his hand is being forced, but they have not been able to settle into a set lineup, in part because they haven't been able to field a consistent group. But it does look like Danny Musovski is probably moving back into that preferred spot at the number 9.
Yeah. When it comes to the other side, I will say Botafogo. A lot of guys to look at. We already talked about Diego de Jesus, but a guy that maybe might be interesting for people that are like, oh, wow, that's a fullback. Alex Telles is a phenomenal fullback. He's quality all over. He's played in Manchester United. He's played at Porto. I mean, the guy has one of the most educated foot passing wise that people have seen.
That means he must be left-footed.
He is left-footed.
Of course, if you go to educated, it's always a left-footer.
Man, he is so good. He might be ambidextrous, but I think left foot is definitely where he has his strength. Santiago Rodriguez, you might remember him as
from New York City
FC. He's a guy that plays on his same side, and they do so well just interchanging those overloads that overlap when it comes to Ted just doing it on that side. Santi Rodriguez is a guy that could play anywhere on the pitch, but I feel like he's most dangerous when he's in those inside channels. He's so creative, such a good passer, very good 1v1, and has a great foot. Like when it comes to shooting, he's been really good for them. So that's another guy that I would think is interesting. And Severino, they just asked him Albert Rusnák about him because they've played in RSL before. He's a guy that's been goal dangerous for them in the past. He's a guy that knows MLS, that knows this team very well. So he's another guy that would be interesting to watch in this one. Defensively, they're very good. Freitas and Gregory. Gregory is the very well known here in the Pacific Northwest because you and I had that story that were on the table. They had put all the money that they had on the table for him, and they were unable to sign him because of money.
And they got JP instead.
Yeah. And then he ends up going to Inter Miami after Chris Henderson happened to go to Miami with a bigger wallet, and he takes him down to Miami. He's been extraordinary for Botafogo, by the way. He was a key component when it came to their 2024 run. He's excellent right now. And then Freitas, he's the other pivot for that team. Serious business guy. I mean, that guy is all business. So Christian Roldan and Obed against those two, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, well, that's a good place probably to take a break. We're going to come back. We're talking a little bit more about the latest that's going on with the negotiations over the player bonuses from the Club World Cup. You're listening to Nos Arietes.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, They specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Haxon Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at haxonferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to haxonferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Haxon Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. Sounder at Heart's Club World Cup coverage is being sponsored by realtor Marnie O'Shan. Yes, that's my sister. With 20 plus years in marketing, business, and negotiation, and an MBA from UW, Marnie O'Shan helps homebuyers and investors make smart, informed real estate decisions. From first homes to 1031 exchanges and developmental deals, she offers expert guidance backed by financial insight and local market knowledge. Expertise in new construction and well-versed on all types of real estate, she'd like to talk to you about your goals and is here to help you move forward with confidence. While I'm obviously not an impartial observer, I can tell you that I have referred both friends and family to Marnie, and she's helped them get what they were looking for at prices they wanted to pay. You can reach her at marnieoshanhomes.com. That's MarnieOshanHomes.com, or email her at marnie@windermere.com.
Welcome back to Nos Arietes. So there has been, I wouldn't say developments necessarily in the negotiations over the player bonuses from the Club World Cup, but I did talk to Bob Foose, who's the executive director of the MLSPA. We also talked to Albert Rusnák today. And the big thing was Rusnák, I think, gave the strongest statement yet. You asked him directly, are you guys thinking about sitting out? And he basically said, no, like as much as we're frustrated, as mad as we are that this doesn't feel fair, our professional pride sort of is shining through here, and we feel like it's important to play in these games because we want to, like, this is something we've worked for. We're not going to sabotage ourselves by not playing in these games. That said, negotiations, that doesn't close the door on this thing. I have a feeling that this is going to be something that we're talking about maybe up through the offseason. Yeah,
it's unfortunate that, you know, all of these things happen, expectations, and the narrative was not what we expected it all over this whole negotiation, and then nothing's going to get done. The reason why I asked Albert so strongly, and I even went all the way to my untouchable, what are you prepared to do? It's because it was a conversation between players. And there was a group of players that thought about, you know, the biggest impact would be doing something together about potentially just sitting. And it's obviously hard. And those conversations we will never be able to understand because they have everything to lose. They, like he said, Albert literally said, we worked too hard. We worked so hard to get to this stage, to this tournament. So they definitely don't want to do that to the fans, but they have to be conflicted because if anything I've seen in Stefan Fry and Christian Roldan over this week is two guys that it's not even about the money anymore. It's about the principle.
Exactly. I would totally agree with that.
It's about being treated as a human being and not an object. It's about being rewarded, not compensated for the job that you were doing. And to me, it came to that point of it's not even about the money, it's about the principle. And that's some dangerous grounds to go on because when you've done so much to get somewhere and you're going to play and it kind of feels like you're just folding onto your principles and what you were trying to accomplish, man, it's just hard to see. So I really hope that as a group, either there is a resolution prior to that game or when all those 18 players step into the field, there is a conversation and saying, look, this is about us. Let's just forget about everything that happened. Mm-hmm. We'll get back to that. But this is about just what we did to get here and what we're going to do to shine when we're on this field.
Yeah. And talking to Foose, he's been the director of the MLSPA for a long time. He basically said, we thought we had kind of got to a point with the league where we had a good relationship. Like he thought, like, you take the 2021, when they had to renegotiate 2020, they didn't love that. But they thought the negotiations the original negotiations for 2020, they thought were very, forward looking, that they felt like they both came with ideas that were both heard out. And the irony of this whole thing is that the clause in the CBA that essentially covers this is actually a artifact from the 2015 CBA, which was the first time that got placed in there. And they increased it from $750 in the original 2015 to 2019 CBA to $1 million, the cap. And they weren't really worried about the cap at that point, because you got to keep in mind, even though the idea of the Club World Cup or an expanded Club World Cup had already sort of started to bubble up, for one, there were no details. We didn't know how much money was going to be online. But the most important thing to know about that is that CBA would have expired in 2024.
Wow. And
so the only reason the CBA is still active is because additional years got added on when they were basically had their... when MLS basically had a gun to their head saying, like, we need to renegotiate this because of COVID. This is an existential crisis, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's fair to say, like, this theoretical tournament was not front of mind. So this whole thing, though, where it's like the players should have negotiated better on this original clause, I don't think is a very valid argument. But I'll come back to this, and we talked about this a lot, is in this, we talked about this on the last show too, but I'll remind everyone that the league came to the players when CONCACAF expanded the prize pool for the Champions Cup. The league came to the players and said, we want to incentivize you to do well in this tournament. We're willing to basically give you half of the prize pool. And so I think the players understandably thought, okay, well, we can renegotiate. This is a much bigger change. We should be able to come to the league and have a reasonable conversation about this. And honestly, I don't think at any point the league has been particularly reasonable about what they want from this agreement. They basically said, no, this is our money and we want to keep it, and we would like to give as little of it to you as possible.
I have known Christian Roldan since he was just a kid coming out of college. I've seen him grow into a man. I've seen him grow into a leader. And not once have I heard him be as direct as he was when he said basically that MLS is negotiating in bad faith.
Yep.
He literally said that MLS is negotiating in bad faith. Again, this is one of the nicest guys that I've ever come across in this team. Mm-hmm. A guy that would not say that unless he really felt it. And that goes exactly to your point. It seems like they're just waiting for the game to get here because they know they have all the leverage because the players have so much to lose by not being part of this game. So they're dealing in bad faith, man. And that is just it almost feels like you're taking 3 steps back or 4 steps back when it comes to the league and the players.
Yeah, and one of the other things Fu said is, like, negotiations like this happen on a continuum. It's one negotiation always bleeds into the next, and all they're really doing is they're kind of poisoning the well for the next negotiation, whatever comes up next. And I will point out that just because they don't come to an agreement before this tournament, it does not mean that this is over, because the players are still going to be fighting for this, and so they've got, every year the league and the players have to make agreements that go outside of the original CBA. Sometimes that's opening training camp early. Sometimes it's doing this. Sometimes it's doing that. There's a big one. The league is talking about potentially changing the calendar. Now, that's not going to happen right away, but that might not happen until the next CBA. But these are all things that are going to have to be negotiated. And if the league is sort of making players upset, and it's not, and as much as we talk about it, it's just these 3 teams. It's not just all the league. Every player is seeing how this is going, and it's just creating a really negative environment. And I don't quite understand why the league is picking this fight. Why they are standing so strong on money that's not theirs. This is not money that the MLS had to work for. These aren't.
Right.
This is money that was basically just gifted to them by FIFA. It doesn't. And then it's even crazier when you think about how performance bonuses. This is absolutely found money. Give it to the player. Maybe it's not all of it to the players. But why would you not just say, here's 50% of the additional prize money? That seems like that would have been able to get the deal done. And instead, here we are talking about it 2 days before the game. What a waste of energy. What a waste of of opportunity this has been. You know, I thought Christian said it really great. I guess it was a Foos quote. We don't want to be doing this right now. We would love our players to be excited.
Yeah.
Christian said that. I want to be excited about this. What are we doing here?
Yeah. And this all goes into how much of an overcast and like this cloud of negativeness that has surrounded
this whole
tournament. And you really missed out on an opportunity to really have a full 69,000 spectator stadium for this tournament, because between the pricing initially for the ticketing, marketing or the lack thereof, the political situation that has prevented or made it difficult for people to get to the States, and
made them worried about coming to the game.
And domestically, the fear because of the ICE post and rumors, or not rumors, reports of them being around the stadiums and trying to do raids and secure the stadiums. It just added so much negative things that this just adds on to everything you just said. Yeah. In addition to that, it's sad that it wasn't more of a spectacle. The hype is not quite there. So it's unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate. I mean, if you had told me a year ago that we would be sitting here, 48 hours away or whatever from the start of this tournament, and we'd not be excited, that we would be if you can just count up the negative news stories about the big stories. I mean, the whole thing that's going on in LA right now, there will be protests on Saturday in Seattle. How big those protests are, we don't know. We can only hope that they don't get, that they don't really get out of hand. But these are things that we have to be aware of, and it's just casting a really weird shadow over all this thing. Gianni Infantino spent the better part of the last, year kissing up to Donald Trump because he wanted to make sure that this was all smoothed out. And I don't know that any of that work has been useful at all.
Nothing has worked. No, definitely. I really don't think that he saw the effect that all of this could have in his pocket or in FIFA's, relevance and importance. So it is sad because, look, it really feels like there is a lot of spectacle and like expectation when it comes to other nations. We just talked to JP and he said how, and it is true, like in South America, the Club World Cup has always been a big deal for, especially the South American teams, because it's like your time to shine and perform against the best in Europe. And so outside of the States, maybe there is a lot of that still excitement about it, but here, man, it's been difficult. And I hope that I'm pleasantly surprised that tomorrow, Sunday, we show up and there's 50,000 people in the stadium. Yeah. I just don't have a high level of expectation for it.
Yeah, I know. That's sort of how I feel too. And I mean, I hope, and who knows, maybe this picks up. Maybe the momentum does pick up as the tournament goes on. I don't want to dismiss that as a possibility. But where we sit right now, it just doesn't seem very likely.
If the Sounders get a 3-1 win, I mean, man, this tournament is going to be just...
Suddenly, everyone's going to be turning around.
It's going to be exciting.
Exactly. I will mention that we're partnering up with Lobbing Scorchers to do a live watch-along at Fast Fashion Brewing in Soto on Saturday. If people are interested in coming and hanging out with some the folks at Lobbing Scorchers and No Sadietas and Sounder at Heart, that's going to be at 4 o'clock, so we're going to open the doors at 4 o'clock. I think the game starts at 5.
It's 5 o'clock.
And I guess FIFA is going to have some representatives there doing some giveaways.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to be kind of a fun little event. If people want to come out, I think that would be a lot of fun. I'm going to try to be there. I got a lot of family stuff. I can't promise anything, but
yeah. I wanted to be there, but it's my son's graduation.
That
early
kind of takes
trumps it a little bit. Yeah, I kind of got to be there. So we're going to do the graduation at 8 in the morning, but then there's obviously the graduation party at my house, and I kind of got to be there.
You do kind of have to be at a graduation party for your son.
Yes,
as much as we like to think our life revolves around the Sounders and soccer, sometimes there are other priorities.
Absolutely. So that otherwise I'd be there. Make sure that you do go. Those guys are hilarious. They're great hosts as well. So it'll be fun. If you show up, it'll be even better. So it's the game per se. I've heard that it's not selling well down there either.
No, they are having. That's been one of the. I mean, none of these games, other than apparently Boca and Real Madrid, have sold pretty well, and I guess the Sounders are probably the third best selling, but. Miami's games have not been selling very well.
That's interesting. Because the media's been there.
The media has definitely, that has been.
They've been running hard in Miami.
We were talking about this, how it's funny that we're sitting here again 48 hours before the game, and there is no foreign media in Seattle. Like at the practice, the practice is open. Like. The Sounders are probably the only team in the whole tournament who are having open practices where they're allowing media to come watch. The only people here are the people that are here every week, every day. And it's just funny how, I don't know, it does speak to sort of the way that the Pacific Northwest gets overlooked, that, we will probably have some of the biggest crowds. We probably have the most local media. And it doesn't really feel like the world has descended upon us at all.
No, I think we got 3 guys from the zone, and that's about it. It's the same people that has been coming here. I'm interested to see what the press box looks like.
I am too. It would be funny if it's all of a sudden it's packed.
Yeah.
Like, where were you guys? Oh, you could go to training? We didn't know.
We were somewhere else. We were at the VMAC. We didn't enter Milan. But it'll be interesting. I don't want to get, if we want to talk a little bit about our expectations for, signings for the summer window.
Yeah.
I think both you and I can be sure that the 10-day window.
The 10-day window, and honestly, it was kind of a dud for everyone. One of the only players that got signed by anyone in this tournament was the guy that LAFC signed, and he had been pretty bad actually at Liga in the last couple of seasons in Liga MX. I realized he had been at one point he had been very good, but the last couple of seasons had been pretty underwhelming at Club
And he was good against LAFC. It was funny because
was he?
Me and my dad were watching that game, and my dad's like, "Who's the Javiro guy? Like, is that like Ecuadorian?" Like, I was like, "I don't know, Dad." And I go look at it. I was like, "Oh, he's Dutch." We were way off. And I was like, "He's so good. He's so good on the ball. He's pacey." Oh,
that's fine.
So I was like, he actually had a decent game against LAFC.
That's why they signed him, I guess.
Yeah, but it's definitely not your knock it out of the park.
No, it wasn't Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't your LAFC type of signing. And look, I don't want to give them too much heat because I'm still trying to figure out if the Sounders are going to
sign anybody in the summer.
And that's crazy. That's crazy. I don't want to scare anybody, but a couple of leads that I had have gone completely flat. I talked to basically the president of the team, and there have been no negotiations, and there's another team that's interested in him. If he goes somewhere else, I might give you guys the name. If not, I might keep that in my pocket. There is talks with a Colombian striker. That's all I'll say. But I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if he's like a Sounders guy
or a Defiance
guy.
Yeah, so that's a good place to be.
Yeah, exactly. So people are gonna be like, "Wow, Niko, really? That's what you got for us?" But I'm trying to give you guys something because we've been talking a lot about other stuff, and I wanted to give you guys a little something, but it's not great. So
no, it's kind of. The last I heard is that the original budget for looking at a U22 was somewhere in the $3 to $5 million range, and you go, okay, $3 to $5 million, you can get a pretty good player, a U22 player at that, and it's sort of like gone as like a. Danny Masovsky has started to perform, and as Osase de Rosario has started to perform, it's like, well, maybe we don't need to spend quite that much, and it's like, well, so then what are we even doing here?
Yeah, no, it's. And I believe you, man. And he makes sense to what I'm hearing on the other end.
Yeah.
Because, look, right now, for any of the guys that I'm looking at, you're going to leave at least 4. I mean, at the minimum,
I think that
4.
To me, I don't even, honestly, the way I feel is if you're going to go out and sign a U22, anything less than 3, keep the money. Keep the money. If you're talking about U22 players, because that guy is not going to come in here and compete for a starting spot. Certainly not right away, but like that's not the level of player they should be targeting. If they're gonna Jose De Rosario is a fine player. I think he might actually be a decent MLS player. But if you can't, the player they bring in has to be a clear level above him.
Exactly. And Craig is gonna sit on his heel of, I told you guys, if I was not going to get a guy that was
he's not going to sign someone better, just to sign someone.
I'm not going to sign somebody. And I would understand people going completely bananas over this.
I do too. I mean, he's in a tough spot because I think on one hand, he knows he needs to sign someone, but on the other hand, he's not going to just sign someone just to be like, see, I did it. What do you want?
Look, nobody wants to run over their own boss, but at some point he might have to just be like,
what do you want me to do?
I have no money. I mean, damn, that's kind of tough. But I mean, maybe he's not going to be that direct. But at some point, he might have to just sit in front of us and provide not an excuse, but a circumstance that he's dealing with. Because, man, it's tough pickings. But long story short, guys, out of the 3 guys that I was following, there's still one that's a possibility, and that guy would not come for any less than $3 million, if anything. Yeah. So it's difficult out there. We'll see what happens with this Colombian striker. I will keep you guys updated if anything clears. But again, not as exciting as you guys might want if I'm trying to figure out if it's a Defiance. Yeah, if it's a Defiance or a Sounders player. So, yeah, with that, I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend.
I will share one more note. There was a little bit of confusion today. The Sounders put out, they have this like clothing line collaboration that they're doing with this company called Hometown. And it's not for me, but whatever. It seems cool if you're a younger person, and I'm not going to get into style or whatever. But it seemed weird because it mentioned a jersey was also going to be coming out. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is a teaser for the third kit, because we know there's a third kit coming out.
Right.
But no, the third kit apparently is going to come out after the Club World Cup. Why? I don't know. I'm not involved. I couldn't get you a good answer. My best impression I get is that Adidas was just like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to wait. We're going to just release it because a bunch of teams are getting third jerseys this year, and most of them are coming in. Miami, of course, they just came out early, so they'll have it for the Club World Cup.
Because it only makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't you want to put that new jersey in a global stage?
Why not? I don't know. It seems like some people are scared of making money.
That is insane. Like, I understand. I don't understand. But my guess is that they want to do the same thing they did a couple of years ago where all the teams wear their new jerseys on the same. But it's okay to not have 3 teams in that week. Or they could... we could. Or you could use it again. You don't have to use it just once. You can use it again.
Right, exactly. We forgot the Sounder. My suspicion is something like, well, LAFC got in late, so we couldn't move everything around, and we kind of forgot about the Sounders.
That is insane.
I don't know. That's. I'm joking. I hope I'm joking. But anyway, that's what we got. I think that's a good note that's a real good positive note to end on.
That's right. This has been, man. If you were not feeling well,
I know.
At all, you listen to this and you're gonna be.
You're gonna get some bad. Yeah, people. You're not being very good hype men.
Yeah, we're not. We're definitely
no.
You know what? I was trying really hard, and but it's just not working because that's the reality that we're on. That's another thing. I heard a comment talk about. I hope you guys really go off script. Look, we have no script. We tell it how it is. We tell it how it is. We give you guys what we really do believe. We once again are going to give you our educated guess and analysis on everything that we see that we have in store for you guys. But there's no script. We were not going to talk about it, but look, I'm just going to say it. I was as upset as anyone about the Vancouver result. I guaranteed a win, and it was an embarrassing loss. Yeah. I said it on Twitter. I'll say it again. So it was embarrassing. So we're going to criticize when we have to, but there is no script here. We're just...
I mean, I'll just tell you, we went off on it pretty... The only reason I didn't want to get into it today is Aaron and I spent a lot of time on Tuesday unpacking that game.
Nice.
And... it was an embarrassment, and it was very bad, and we've said it before, the vibes heading into this tournament are not great, and I really hope next week when we record this, we're like, no, actually, we're super excited because we just beat Botafogo, and we were coming off a tie against Atletico, and we're as long as we don't embarrass ourselves against PSG, we're moving through. I would love it if that was what we were doing next week. I don't know if that's what I'm planning.
Yeah, I don't know either, man. That PSG game, it
did get a little scary.
They're all right.
They're a pretty good team.
Yeah, they're a pretty good team.
They are. All right. Well, Niko, thank you for doing this. Of course, people can follow you on Blue Sky, El Rolo NW. You are, of course, also on YouTube, Pulso Sports. You can read him, listen to him on Lobbing Scorchers and Sounder at Heart. And
we'll be doing I'll be helping out Fox 13 on their post game coverage. Yeah,
that's new.
It's gonna be kind of fun. We were there with Aaron Levine on Thursday, I believe, and now on Wednesday. And now we're gonna do something post game to, I'm guessing, break down the Botafogo game, which will be interesting and different.
Great.
So check me out there. It'll be, of course, repping Sounder at Heart, and we'll be there.
I'll have to get you a Sounder at Heart shirt to wear.
That's right. It's right here. Here you go.
All right. Well, I'm Jeremiah Jan. This is Nos Arietes, and we'll catch you next time.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party.
I feel a lot better than Bob.